2, 2. All right, well, we are live on the air for what I'm sure is going to be a highly high quality production of our joint Microsoft technology success. We're 5 minutes away from a real start, right, Vanessa? So
we are, yes.
Yeah.
Everyone has some time to settle in.
Yeah, and our presentation crew is still joining in as we speak from their houses in safe social distance quarantine mode, or maybe the real office if you're the only one there. Yeah, so looks like we got people coming in. So anyway, we'll be on and off mute. We got a little how-to video scrolling. Which way is it? It's no, that way. There it is. It's over that way.
Yep.
Talking about Teams usage, and so we're gonna get going. Bruce and I are gonna kick it off here in about 4 minutes or so, talking about change in the theory of constraints. After that, we're gonna have Michelle and Gilbert and I doing Teams. And we'll have little breaks in between the sessions, right? How long are we having?
We have a 10-minute break after the team session.
Right.
And then we'll hop back in with Power BI after that.
Awesome. And again, we shifted the real event to this format after, well, I don't know, the world changed. So we are actually I am both your technology center director, one of the speakers, and the actual live event producer. Normally we'd have someone else doing all of that, but now it's Vanessa and Doug, right? I mean, really. And we are not anywhere physically near each other except for the internet. So we should probably do an episode, at least on my show, of how we made this little crazy event, because it's been pretty skunkworks. Anyway, we'll get going in 2 or 3 minutes. We just didn't want people to not have anything on the air, and I'm sure this is exciting banter for you all. There is a Q&A panel. You want to talk about that and how we're going to handle that today?
Yeah, so I'll kind of kick off the event. So first, thank you for joining us for our first ever virtual live event. As Doug mentioned, we're just crossing our fingers here. We're all learning new technology during these times. So we're hoping for a good event today. We're honored to have a strategic partnership with Doug Splinter in the Microsoft Technology Center, who will be presenting the sessions today. So the MTC actually usually only works with enterprise businesses, and Success is one of the only small business partners that have access to Doug and these experts at the MTC. So on that note, we're also excited to announce that we'll be hosting quarterly virtual events like this to further enable your 365 practice. So stay tuned for those dates. I wanted to touch base on how we'll be doing a prize giveaway today. So if you've been to our events in the past, you know that we like to give away prizes to attendees. So in the spirit of supporting small businesses during this time, and in partnership with Lenovo, we're giving all participants to a $25 gift card to either Butcher and the Boar or the Parasoli Group. So these are two of our clients that have restaurants in the local Minneapolis area that are suffering during this time. So we're hoping to give them some help, and then also give you guys a chance to go out to eat once that becomes a thing.
That. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, that's
for sure.
Cool. Yep. I've been trying to avoid the national chain stuff. So what else you got, Melissa?
Yep. The plan for the morning, Doug Splinter and Bruce Locke of Success will kick things off. Then we'll hand it off to Michelle Gilbert with the Microsoft Technology Center, who will review Microsoft Teams. And then Valerie Bergman, also with the Microsoft Technology Center, will review Power BI, which leads me to finally how we'll address questions throughout the event. So you'll notice on the right-hand side, you see a Q&A panel. It has a little question mark with some chat boxes. So if you click that, you have the option to submit a question. So during the presentation, you can submit questions as the presenters are demoing the applications. However, if we don't, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can during that time, but if we don't get to it, the last 10 minutes of both sessions will be dedicated to Q&A. So that is how we'll be doing questions throughout the event.
Yeah, and you're going to be moderating. You're going to be moderating Q&A for us, right? And at the end, there's a feedback link. So we'll show this again. Do remember, since it's a bit.ly link, they are case sensitive. So if you were to not do the upper cases that you see on screen, you'll maybe get somebody else's survey page. And I'm sure they welcome your feedback, but we would prefer it more to come our way. All right. So I'm gonna do a little cut over here, and I'm hopefully gonna bring Bruce on with me. So I think there we go. So we got Bruce on with myself, yes. And then we're gonna cut over to a little bit of content between Bruce and I, because we're spot on, I think. Aren't we at 9 o'clock?
We are.
I don't know that we always start on time when we do these events physically, Bruce, when we're not at the convention center and stuff, but we did it today, digitally speaking. It's 9:01 a.m. And we're ready to go. All right, and Vanessa, I see Val's in the lobby, so if we could cue her in, and we're on the air. All right, so like I said, we're not trying to be overly produced here today, and we're live and on the air. All right, so what we have going on this morning is Bruce and I were talking. I did this presentation last, was it fall, for the event, and I did a presentation on the digital transformation and the importance of change and change management. And we were talking through what we wanted to do for a little kickoff for this event. And because we see a lot of organizations try and do things, and digital transformation is this big topic, but what does it really mean? And I liked your presentation on theory of constraints, which I'm not going to do justice to, so that's why you're here, in order to do that part of things. But what I really wanted to do was talk about the mashup of these two things. And that's kind of our goal, right? Is talk about theory of constraints, and when you've picked one of these things to work on, then how should you go about approaching getting that change actionable through your organization? Fair?
Fair.
Absolutely. All right, so why don't we kick it off as a little joint discussion around the concepts behind digital transformation. It's this puffy concept. And I think your theory of constraints gives some actionability to that, which is why I love it so much. And as you look on screen, you can all read. So I'm not going to read stats off the slides because I'm pretty sure everybody can read things. But essentially, people say, hey, you have to change things because you're either looking to improve your business, you're worried about irrelevancy. And I think right now, given the disruption that's happening in market, it's even more important, those kind of facets of what we're talking about. But then there's also a lot of people who say, hey, you only have a limited run of time before competition gets you. But then how do you pick? If that's the thing, okay, well, I know I have to do things differently. What do I tackle? And you and I both believe these things are a journey. It's not some singular moment. And the constraints thing, you want to talk about how, the generally speaking, the theory of constraints and how it kind of applies to this, like what it is philosophically?
Sure. Theory of constraints recognizes that in any system or process, you don't have unlimited capacity to meet demand. That somewhere in that system, there's a singular bottleneck or constraint that determines the flow of that value to meet the demand. And it's a body of knowledge that helps you understand how to best manage around that constraint to maximize both profit and top line growth.
So if we map that to digital transformation, we both agree it's a journey. You're going to continually work through things. There's not like this moment like I have digitally transformed or all constraints are removed, because in theory, there'll always be one you can go work on. Right?
That's exactly right. In fact, the subtitle to the where theory of constraints started with Eli Goldratt, and the goal is, the subtitle is continuous improvement. Literally, it's a journey of continuous improvement. It never ends.
I mean, and there's other frameworks for it, Kaizen, for continuous improvement. There's other ones too. I happen to like how this one is, I don't know, more comprehensible than some of the other ones, for like actionable. Hey, speaking of actionable, this is the whole point that we decided we would have for our thing, right? To decide what might have an impact, Bruce's portion of the universe, right? Like what things should you be focusing on? And then my part, which is, all right, we've decided, how the heck do we get there, right? You can't ignore either half of that equation. You might be effectively working on an ineffective element, or have chosen the right thing and not done a good job of getting it out.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's why I jokingly said this is the Reese's peanut butter cup conversation, right? Someone has got chocolate, the other's got peanut butter. Smash these things together. Now, I'm one of those rare people who doesn't like peanut butter and chocolate together. But if you do, right, this kind of thing could be highly effective and useful for where you go. So now I'm going to be slide guy for you, and you're going to talk us through theory of constraints. Right.
So when Doug and I talked about mashing these up, I'm a whiteboard guy, so I naturally went to my tablet and started sketching it out, and I thought, this will work. So normally when I talk theory of constraints, and I've been doing this for since about 2004, working with a variety of small businesses, I typically talk to one of the first two bullets. The first is identifying the constraint and trying to maximize the flow of the system, or looking at the implications from a profitability and growth standpoint, because leveraging theory of constraints really has a dynamic impact on both the top line and the bottom line. For example, I've been with Success now for 7 years, and our top line has grown by 2.5 times, but our bottom line has grown by 9 times, actually more than 9 times. So it's a pretty effective body of knowledge on how to operate any type of business. So as depicted in the next slide, I usually don't talk about this aspect of it. It kind of comes along with the other conversations, but it's really identifying what to change. And I've never really created a presentation around that, so you're going to see my sketches as shown in this next slide.
As you and I both know, that's my favorite kind, is like the whiteboarding of things. Like, we're both a little twitchy not having our whiteboards in front of us. We'll maybe try live with pen next time, but for this time, right. Bruce was kind enough to convert his whiteboards into slides for me, so we can walk through this with you. But fire away.
So this is my bad rendition of a simple process. 5 steps. They're dependent upon one another. It could be a project. It could be, underwriting a loan. It could be a case in a law firm. It's just how work gets done. And this is as it's shown in the next slide, this is kind of my attempt to show that somewhere in the system we have a constraint. And I did it by just having less capacity, as shown in that middle box. And then, of course, showing, here, Xing out the black lines in steps 4 and 5. Those capacities really no longer matter, because steps 4 and 5 are dependent on whatever gets passed by that middle constraint. So as shown in the next slide, literally the constraint determines the flow of whatever value you're bringing to meet the demand in whatever marketplace you're competing in. And because it determines flow, it actually determines your revenue. Nothing else in this system will do that for you. And recognizing that is incredibly important, so you can organize your operations around that. So, but our conversation is around change. So on the next slide, I'm trying to depict that. So I just arbitrarily picked the first step in the process. It could be a step, it could be a department, it could be a machine. But let's say I'm heading up that department and I want to go faster. So in the next slide, I basically show how I've increased my capacity. I've tried to double it here, and using cost accounting, therefore my unit cost is in half, and I'm getting rewarded for that. I'm really excited. I've brought some efficiency to this step, to this department I run. But here's the challenge. So on the next slide, I'm replacing that black line depicting flow with the green line. I can now depict it faster, but of course now I run into the constraint of the next step, which is a black flow, and then ultimately I hit the constraint, which is the red flow. So ultimately, as shown in the next line, I don't change anything. And in fact, if I keep running, I'm going to build up a pile of work in process that unfortunately doesn't increase flow, but it increases my cycle time, because my next unit of work that comes into the system not only has to go through the 5 steps, but it has to get through the pile of work. So here's a change that I thought was impactful to my system, but in fact it had no impact on the flow, which means it had no impact on my revenues. And ultimately, however, and if you show the next slide, it likely had an impact on cost. And if I let the work pile up, it also had an impact on work in process, which means I'm investing my capital unwisely, and therefore my profit goes down and my cash gets consumed. So here's a seemingly good thing to change. I'm the department head. I cut my unit costs in half, yet I had a negative impact on the company as a whole. So theory constraints really is a lens that helps you determine what to change and where and why, and even the priority, in which order you should make those changes. So Doug, if you go to the next slide, it's really the combination of TOC, and it literally says change only that which improves the system. Don't sub-optimize and think a change in a department or a step is actually a good change. Think through the entire system. And the best type is to increase the flow. More capacity with the same cost. That's productivity. And if you can't achieve that, then reduce cost to maintain flow, and that's efficiency. But I'll tell you, productivity wins out over efficiency every day. Unfortunately, we're usually taught to go after efficiency, but to be able to produce more with the same cost, if you can sell that excess capacity, man, the profit starts to go through the roof. And once you identify what to change, then I'll turn it over to Doug You need a framework to execute that change so you can do it really, really well. And in combination, you can start accelerating the pace of productive change, which results in highly profitable growth.
Which is kind of the goal, right? And
Kinda.
the reason we want, yeah, it is a goal, right, for a business. And this is where we come into, and I want to put this in like I had the same thing before. I was a former law firm IT director, and I told you this story before. We did a business process visualization on new matter intake, simple thing, right? And it wasn't happening quick enough. And people are like, well, maybe we need more, clerks involved in the process. But actually, it was an approval process run by the partners that was the constraint. When we actually analyzed it, we gained visibility over it, right? Which is kind of why we're having Power BI in here today. If you don't know what something is, if you don't have visibility as to what the process is, by the step, and you don't have business reporting metrics around it, you won't know where the constraint is. Which is why I so love the last presentation that we're doing with Val, which is that theory of constraints thing. And I think we may be having some broadcast issues. So I'm waiting to see if it goes back on the air. It says our event will continue in a moment. So
I've got you, Doug.
We're back. Now we're back. And now the camera's facing down for you, though, just so we're aware.
Sorry.
I told everyone it's going to be a high production value component, right? So we'll try and detect pauses. Again, we are using everyone's internet connections in order to do this. So we'll try and keep it on the air. But I think the point behind this is, do you have visibility, which we're working on later on? And if you're going to fix things with these cool collaboration tools that Michelle and I are going to show off and other things, then we want to make sure the stuff we're fixing is actually relevant according to the theory of constraints. Have you visualized what it is you're doing, and are you really making an impact? And that's the goal.
That's it.
Yeah. See, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? So then how do you, we're simple, everybody would do it, right? I wanted to point out, we've done this before, and this will be kind of small, but this is a value mapping exercise. And you don't have to, you can just get a sense for the whiteboard. And this is something we did with a customer. We brainstormed a whole bunch of areas, and then like things they could go attempt, if you will. We call them high value use cases. So if you're thinking about leveraging teams, what the attempt is just to brainstorm an entire list of things that you could do better, right? For collaboration or project management and stuff. And then we're mapping them both on difficulty and impact, right? Now, the difficulty scale is going to involve cost, people, transformation, some other things we're going to talk about on top of that, right? But the impact is really where that's the subjective thing that you should be mapping, in my opinion, against the theory of constraints, right?
That's exactly right.
I can, like my organization of architects, you're going to meet Valerie, you're going to talk to Michelle from the specialist team today, and myself on some team stuff, and we're going to be all geeky about it. And we get very excited about our technology, but the real value of any technology is always expressed in terms of business impact. And so what we want to do is make sure if you're looking at Teams or something else, obviously right now, when you sent everyone home and you started using Teams, you're going to have the out-of-the-box value proposition. We were a pre-built constraint remover. You couldn't collaborate, and now you can, right? Like that's a very different portion of things. So I'm just trying to get other presenters in for our next part, so we'll see how that goes when we get to it. But we want to make sure that you're, once you get past those emergency fires, that your next investments are more thoughtful around constraints that are going to have a positive impact to your business. Obviously, when everybody went home, it was get internet connectivity, get PCs and compute devices, get headphones. There were all these, those were the urgent constraints against the work from home scenario to continue doing business. But now we got to go after the other things. And I think that's where the long-term value in technology is continually applied. Not that first easy fruit plucking, but the other ones that strategically impact that constraint flow. And that's really what I'm trying to make sure that we focus on. So Microsoft has partnered with ProSci, and we use a framework you referenced called the ADKAR framework. And we are having some live event pauses, so I'm going to wait until it tells us we're back. We are, all right. So hopefully those of you who are watching pauses, it's not too bad from a pause standpoint. And what we want to do is go ahead and think about the change we want to introduce as more of a structured process. And the ADKAR framework from ProSci says, all right, you've brainstormed this list, you've picked one. Now you're going to have to go through a framework of getting change out there. And the one thing I want to point out to people is the worst thing you can do is get partial change across parts of your organization, because then you're really only increasing complexity of your organization. You're not actually achieving a positive change outcome. Now, there's always gonna be some people who won't want to change, right? But if you don't, it's like when we take people, we start migrating their data to the cloud. If they never get rid of their on-prem assets, if there's no cloud advantage to collaboration or productivity, you've actually increased your complexity and you haven't really gained anything. Does that make sense? Like the goal, and we are having a lot of stop-start. So if anyone's on the confidence side, that would be interesting. I'm just waiting for it to say it will continue again in a moment. Hopefully it will continue again in a moment. All right, if you are still watching us, it's that we can kind of get the status update as to how the stream is coming. And we are having a lot of stop-starts in our live events. So I imagine we were dealing with internet issues. On the presenter side, we seem to be okay, but on the attendee side, and Vanessa, if you could post a Q&A maybe and see if people are getting it. We show as we're back on the air again at this point in time, so hopefully we are. All right, so we're gonna go back into the change management framework. In order to get change going through the organization, what do you really need? You need an awareness of the change you want to make, right? So I have to tell you, Bruce, this is the change, and everyone needs to understand what that change is. Step one, if you're not aware of the change we're asking you to do, then nothing else matters because you're not aware. Now, I would like to point out there's a lot of thing about awareness as to how many of you get emails you don't read? So simply sending an organization-wide email announcing a change is not a change, okay? So that's not enough. Maybe it is if you're a small company. You get beyond like 20 or 30 people, and then there's the next one, which is the desire to change. Desire is driven a lot by how do you feel about that change, right? What is your emotional response to it? Are you a person who likes change at all? Is your job already full? Is your plate full? And I'm asking you to do more, right? Like why do I need to do this? So the awareness of the change that's needed, the desire to support the change, the knowledge of how to change. So Bruce, I would like you to start doing online meetings and work from home. I don't know how to use Teams. I don't know how to do this. I'm all in from continuing to remain gainfully employed. So I have an awareness and a desire, but maybe I don't have the knowledge to do it effectively. I'm not comfortable scheduling online meetings and all that stuff. Then once you have the knowledge, then you have to have the ability. Man, I now know it, but maybe I'm not good enough in order to make the change happen. And that's the next step in it, is that if you don't have the actual ability to do it, and people frequently think that giving someone the knowledge gives them the ability. And I would like to point out that's a huge leap for a lot of people. Some people are gonna be really good at certain kinds of things. Some people are gonna be good at others. And one of the things we focus on in Microsoft is Microsoft has tiers of management, like a lot of companies do. And we always say that change is best received from the highest level of the organization, or your immediate manager. Everyone in the middle seems kind of fuzzy. Does that make sense to you? I mean, Bruce, what do you think of that? Does that resonate?
Absolutely. So let me go back to something you said earlier about, don't do partial change to the organization. It just makes it more complex. So last summer, we, maybe unique in our industry, we created a product manager position to help us bring new services to market. And that may be one of the most complex things you can do, right? A new product or service involves the entire organization, from marketing to sales to delivery to the back office. And that's hard for small companies to do. And you mentioned you gave this presentation at our Fall Classic, and we immediately adopted ADKAR as part of our bringing new offerings to market. And it's had a big influence. Because again, you bring a new service to market, it involves the entire organization, and to synchronize that and come to market at the same time across the board and deliver a good product and a good experience, that's really hard. And again, you can identify what to change, but executing is really hard, and this framework has really been helpful for us. So awesome. I'm a big advocate for it.
Well, good. So then the last one is perhaps let's say you go through, I made you aware of the change. I got you to agree that it's a good thing, right? I trained you on how to use Teams. I mean, let's be honest, this morning we were prepping for this live event and you were trying to get the confidence view up and going. How did that go?
Not well.
It did not go well. So we haven't practiced enough. So now your ability to do this, you're like, well, okay, I'm comfortable with this part, but that part I need more knowledge, right, on top of it. Do you have a secondary monitor? Do you have the ability to do that? Those kind of things. Do you have a quiet enough environment? Is your internet reliable enough as we watch our event bump a little bit on pauses? Like, these are the actual things that you need to know about where you're at. So do I have the ability to do that, to demonstrate those skills and behaviors? And those constraints can be very different as an individual, right? applying the theory of constraints to your own personal life is always fascinating. Don't do it. It's very frustrating. It'd be like, I should spend my life according to these process flows, right? We have this whole methodology in the MTCs around discovery and how to handle issue resolution and all sorts of stuff. And my family will occasionally say, stop MTCing me, right? So it's like, stop change managing. Fair enough. That last one, the R, the reinforcement. Then we have to have an ongoing. It's not a master move that we talked about in the cold open. It's not some kind of journey. I mean, it's not just a single move, it's a journey. So we have to have ongoing reinforcement to say, you did it once. Now we want you to keep doing that. Otherwise, we've essentially put the constraint back in place if we can't sustain the change, right? So that's very important on top of it. Okay. So we have a tactical example that we wanted to walk through. And for like an example of collaboration. So if we were to think about, we've gone through a constraint exercise and we've identified things that are the constraint. So we want you to stop doing these things. This is a classic kind of Office 365 style Teams example. In order to increase effective collaboration, we would like you to stop sharing documents and follow-ups from meetings via email and using paper notebooks. We would like you to collaborate on documents and team sites and use OneNote and these things, right? Like for leadership, we want you to stop sending organizational status updates via email, and we want you to start sharing things via SharePoint News, right? What we're doing here is this is about a digital transformation initiative that potentially, essentially allows you to have that. We're identifying the actionability at different levels of the organization. Who's going to do what to reinforce and sponsor that change across the organization? And so the knowledge workers, here's what we're asking you to do. Leadership, we're asking you to do this, right? The different roles in the organization, here's what we're asking you to do in order to initiate that change. And then you actually have to go back through the ADKAR framework for each one of those things and say, how do I make sure all those people in the chain are equipped in order to do it? When you do that, from our experience, it's going to cause a couple of things. First, it's going to make you work on fewer things, right? You're going to pick fewer things and you're going to try and do them well, right? Thoroughly and successfully, and identify what you can do. And if you fail at it, then you kind of got to go back to the drawing board of how am I going to get these activities done? Or maybe it doesn't have the value you think you had. So you misalign the value or impact, which is why I don't think you should work on something that's not aligned to your theory of constraints that we opened with. Kind of bring this back around full circle. Because and this is why I say leadership has to sponsor these things, because if I pick it from IT and I say, this is best for you all, it's just another one of those messages that well, they're just trying to make me use the tech they bought or something along those lines. And that's really not what any of this is supposed to be about. I mean, it isn't. It's supposed to be about having an impact on your business. If you look at Microsoft's mission statement, right, it's to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. Nowhere in there does it say people need to create more Word documents. They need to have more Teams meetings. These things are done in the pursuit of something, an impact to your business. So sometimes you buy like an accounting package because it's impact to your business. It's going to allow you to run a general ledger according to GAAP, right? Like you just need certain things to happen so your CPA can do the work for your business. When it comes to technology, the applications are so broad that it is super easy. I mean, crazy easy to start working into your terms on one of those green bucket items and pooling a bunch of activities around something that doesn't really matter to your business.
And that's a great, as you said, swing back to theory of constraints. Make sure it affects your system. Doug, you mentioned the mission. It's not about technology. When we think about serving our clients, we use a simple mantra, if you will. Business is hard. IT is hard. Our job is to make IT easier so that our clients can pursue their mission. They're not in the business of IT. They're not in the business of Teams. They're not in the business of Google. They're in the business of delivering some value, whether it's mental health services or it's construction. It doesn't matter. They're in business for their mission. Our job is to support that mission, and using tools and frameworks like theory of constraint and ADKAR will help them in their change journey, because none of us can stand still. As you said, the world's changing. We have to transform. Our competitors are doing it. We need to do it. And to have a framework that we can be confident in, that the changes we invest in are having a material impact on our ability to deliver, is critical. In fact, if you do this well, in most cases, it will set you apart from your competitors.
All right. Well, I don't know if that's how you expected a cold open for a Microsoft tips and tricks for Teams and BI and stuff to go. But as we show you this software, we really did want people to say, do it with a purpose, aligned around something. And I think these two frameworks fit very well together. We have links in the follow-on if we can do more. We got a couple minutes for Q&A. I'm going to be looking kind of away as I sort of queue up the next co-presenter with me to see if I can get her live for her content share. And so, Vanessa, do we have any Q&A from people or anything that came in?
We do. We have someone asking, where does buy-in have a place in the ADKAR model?
That's a good question. So, Doug, I'll take a quick shot at it. So, at least from my perspective, theory of constraints, the buy-in will demonstrate value in terms of probably three areas. One is the flow, the ability to deliver more on your mission. The other then translates either into growth on the top line or obviously the bottom line. So I think using that lens will, it'll literally talk in terms of an owner, a senior manager in terms of how they would measure success.
Yeah, I mean, and buy-in happens at multiple levels, right? So, but you do need that, like inside of Microsoft. I don't know if anyone's ever if you have a chance to read it, Satya Nadella did his book, Hit Refresh, and he titled it because refresh in a browser, because he's an engineer mindset, selectively returns that which needs to be updated, right? And that was his metaphor for it was. This is because the original definition of refresh in a browser was to selectively update that which is out of date and needs updating. And he looked around Microsoft and there was this cartoon that said all the engineering groups were in armed foxholes pointing against each other, right? And he's like, that's not the Microsoft I joined. That's not what I want culturally. And so we went through this giant cultural transformation inside of Microsoft where at leadership level, it became about collaboration. How we rewarded people changed for have you leveraged the work of others, contributed, and what have you done as an individual? So the three pillars of Microsoft success for a given employee in our organization, we've been very public about this, is what have you done? What have you leveraged from others? And what have you contributed to the work of others? And all three pillars are viewed equally inside of Microsoft, which requires you to balance your thinking around the contributions, the ability to help people, to do your own great work, and to look at the work around you and see how you can accelerate it as part of your contributions. That's a whole different mindset than 7 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then we had to get on board. One of the things they talk about in HR, if you join the company, is they're like, we're not about, if you want to be cool, you can work somewhere else. If you want to make other people cool, join Microsoft. So it's not. So someone's like, you guys don't have this or that sizzle or whatever. Like, we're not concerned about that. We also believe that revenue is a lagging indicator of the success of our work, right? That our Wall Street success is, you can't sit around and wait on that. You have to be out executing, and then eventually they figure out what you've done and decide to give you credit or not for the work that you've done. And so culturally, I think that's an important, what is your company's, value, and how is it expressed to your employees and the culture you preserve? That's a really big deal. All right, any other questions for us as we kind of get ready to transition away?
One last question. So as an organization, we are deeply committed to traction. How does this relate to the concepts described in traction? Can either of you speak on that?
Doug, I'll take a shot at it. So, traction is related to the entrepreneurial operating system. And the way I like to describe that is not unlike a computer, right? The operating system provides discipline in the background to allow you to use the computer. So in one sense, EOS and traction is a discipline methodology. It keeps you on track. It keeps you on the same page, but it's not the content. Traction doesn't deliver the content. That's your culture, as Doug says, that's your mission. And these other frameworks, theory, constraints, and ADKAR are how you go about executing that. So
strategy,
they go right together.
Strategy to the bridge between strategy and tactics, the work breakdown and its prioritization, and then the actionability of getting that change done through the organization. Top, middle, execution. Right? And I think that if you get all those things together, and boy, it's so easy. You just wave a magic wand and you go about doing it.
And it works.
And it just works. Well, I do think if you, it's so hard to do because it's going to also, you're not going to be able to do as much. One of the things we talk about inside the Technology Center is effective versus busy. Right?
Yeah, we talk about demultitasking. You can't be working on too many things at the same time. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And eventually, it's like house projects, right? Eventually, if you don't finish one, your whole house looks trashed. I'm looking around mine, feeling that way a little bit right now. So I feel like I took on too many half-done projects, and so now I'm going around deciding what do I have without going too many trips to the hardware store inappropriately in our quarantine to have time to work on. All right, well, we're at time. So Bruce, I'm gonna kick you off the video stage. You're welcome to hang around audio and comment on the rest of where it's going. And I'm gonna bring in Michelle Gilbert to join me, at least from a video standpoint. And so Michelle should be popping up on screen. Michelle, you can wave and say hi to people if you want to.
Hi there.
So there we go. And you're actually unmuted, so we're gonna do that. And we're gonna shift over to content and get us going. While we're going, you want to talk a little about what we're gonna go as we shift over into teams and a little more teams and how to?
Sure, absolutely. So first off, let me introduce myself. I'm Michelle Gilbert. I am based out of Edina, Minnesota, and I'm a Microsoft Teams technical specialist. So I work on all things Teams. My whole life is in Teams. Today, we're going to talk to you about what are some cooler things, just extending itself really beyond the communication and collaboration. What can we do that we're throwing in apps to tabs and forms and different things that can really extend your capabilities within Teams and in collaborating. So today, Doug and I came up with a few things that would be pretty cool on event planning. We're going to show you forms. We're going to show you cool things like MindMaster, setting up a poll in Poly, what it means to add a tab. So first, we're going to show you first we're going to actually walk through what we've done, and then we're going to show you how we did it. So you set, Doug?
I think so. I mean, so we're going to show you a little of the visual effects, and if someone's curious about this, we'll teach you how to do this a little bit down the road. What we've got is we got a couple different views, and I'm just getting one more thing queued up to make sure we've got it. We want to be able to show you the side by side, so it might be a little bit small at times, but let's go ahead and show you. So right now you see Michelle is kind of big on the screen, and the lower right-hand corner, that's my computer. And if we swap it around, we'll be able to tag those around so we can kind of show the back and forth of the two of us working on things. It might be a little bit blurry, but we wanted to show you both sides, and the breadcrumbs we provide later will let you go along. So if you can't quite read everything, just try and get the gist of what we're going. So we figure being able to show people both sides of the equation, and I may experiment with the layout and try and make it as clear as possible as we go through. So we've got the ability to kind of shift around our layouts and try and show you a little bit of back and forth. So we'll be experimenting with that as we go. So again, our topic was a little beyond chat and meetings. So we're going to make an assumption here. We're going to assume that you've already used a little bit of Teams and that you have chats and meetings going, but you may not be using a whole lot more than that. Fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's what we're going after today. And then hopefully you'll pick up a few things. And then again, I run a weekly show called Office Flash Friday. You can look that up if you want to. And we're always doing kind of what's new and going through it. It's a little more enterprise focused. So for this segment, we tried to pick things we thought were applicable to organizations of any size, as opposed to just, our super large enterprise customers where Michelle and I normally hang around. And it's fun because I always say my customers are ocean liners, and a lot of the success customer base are more like speedboats. So you guys can actually go do things in a fairly quicker period of time than the giant ships we normally deal with. So let's dive into it. Michelle gave the layout. First, we're gonna go ahead and talk through a little bit of having just. I do want to do one. I guess I wanted to cold open by starting with one cool meeting feature I think people don't take advantage of, and that is I'd be curious. I wish we had the live voting up, but I didn't get a chance to get that going. But one of the things we want to talk about is the humble meeting recording. So we're sitting here in a team, and you can see we've got this Success April event team, and we're in the general channel, and you'll notice there's a meeting recording that's present right inside of it. Now, if you go ahead and fire up any meeting, and I won't go all the way into starting one up, if you start a meeting up on top of it, And if you haven't played around, you saw it go on with the snap camera. It's kind of fun in order to do it. So if you came in here, you'd say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and start this meeting and go on. Once a meeting's going, there's a little ellipsis button, and you can actually choose to start recording the meeting. If you record the meeting, when the meeting is over for your staff meeting, whatever it is, you get a link to the recording, which is stored inside of Microsoft Stream. So here's the meeting. Michelle and I did a test one yesterday on top of it, and you may hear it play in the background real briefly as it comes up. So you click on it. So let's pretend that we were playing this event, and there's Michelle and I, and here's the little, it puts in a little banner page for, you know, what the topic of the meeting was and everything else. And once you get into the meeting, you can go ahead and hit play, and you can go back through. Now, I don't know about you, Michelle, how efficient are most of your meetings?
Well, they can drag, for sure.
Some can drag. And the beginning, as people come in, there's always that like 10-minute lag, or maybe it was a staff meeting you missed, and there was a certain part where they talked about the budget. Mm-hmm. Now, we always like to name drop animals in our test recordings and stuff. Like yesterday we did like llamas and all sorts of things that were on top of it. But what I essentially want to point out is when you load a video into Stream, you can play it right from within Teams. There's also this button over here that says Open in Microsoft Stream. When you do that, that meeting comes in. And if you look at the meeting that we have right here, so there's Michelle and I from our meeting yesterday. And notice if you've activated, there's a transcript over on the right-hand side. And you can actually search the transcript of your meeting. So if you really did want to know when we talked about llamas, you can find out there's when we were talking about llamas and porcupines and all that stuff. But if you're like, well, I'm not really interested, I wanted to know when they talked about the budget. So if budget's in there, it should come back here in a second on top of it. Yep, there it is at 53 and in a minute and 12. And you can say where they talked about budget or maybe llamas. And if you click on that point, it'll fast forward your video to that particular point. So you can skip over all the part of any recording and get to the part you want.
Yep, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of the cooler things. If you know, now it does, by the way, this trick, even though Teams meetings, you hit the button, the recordings go up there, kind of magic, right? And they get indexed and searchable and all that stuff. And there's a few other things too. You can see like who was talking when. There's like a people view on top of it. You could add some interactivity into that video to have a little survey or a quiz about the video if you want to. So there's some cool things you can do when you pop on top of that. But you can also just take any video that you have within your enterprise, like or any video you download, and you can just upload that video. So in this case, someone took an hour-long public presentation that from one of the Microsoft Build conferences, from a conference that was relevant to the industry. And you can just load that video up and you get that exact same interactivity and transcript of any video that you upload. So while this isn't directly Teams related, it is knowledge related to the work on a team. Any video you put up, you could go ahead and look out and say, I'm pretty sure since it's the Azure CTO, he's going to start talking about Azure at some point in the thing. And it'll then come back and find all the times that was mentioned within the transcript of this video. So this is a pretty long one. So you can say they didn't get out to talking about Azure until about an hour and 15 minutes in. Well, I would like to skip to that point, please. And I really just want to get to the point where they talk about blockchain on Azure. So this is the ability for you to take any video. That means if you had a meeting that was in WebEx or it was in Zoom or somewhere else, and you get that recording, you can load it in and have the exact same interactivity on top of it that you'd have with a Teams meeting, which we think is pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, Doug, we have a question that's that's related to this. So we have a question from an attendee. How do you work through the privacy issues and general distrust of using recording features? He wants to encourage using this more, but people are skeptical.
Okay. So I would tell you that there's really two things about that. First, recordings are automatically secured only to the group that participates in them. You can also put forth a privacy policy. I didn't talk about that, but if actually we did kind of talk about it when we had the cold open for it, because Michelle and I were going in and it said at the very beginning, hey, you know, your privacy policy comes in up top. So you do have to have a privacy policy you communicate to your employees about this. There is a certain amount of, does your organization want to do that or not? That's fair. You have to consider through that. The vast majority of my organizations are allowing team video recording, but they do have that privacy policy pop up that says the person has to consent. So you don't have to do it for everything. And certainly you have to decide what kind of meetings you want to record. So for example, when we do certain kinds of HR meetings or something as a manager, those don't get recorded, you know? So there's that kind of stuff. but generally speaking, it's the security, privacy, and visibility around the recordings that tend to drive it. Now, again, you could just only use this for training videos or for more public content if you want to sort of build that awareness of what it's like and to understand the privacy and security controls, and then kind of eventually open that up to more granular use. But I find if people find something extremely useful, then it does tend to drive behaviors. But I would say if you have a challenge around that, then start with doing more public training content, turning it more of a knowledge base asset, and then let that culture spread down to an awareness and an understanding of what a video policy should look like. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I agree, Doug. I'd say that the use case I use it for the most is I'm having a customer engagement and I'm recording it, and whomever may not have been able to make the meeting or want to see it again, then I can go ahead and share it out. So it's very intentional when I hit the record.
That makes sense. I mean, I think it does. Hopefully that
Yeah.
answered your question on as far as that part goes. Okay. Well, yeah, but I think if you look at the video privacy policies and the rest of the stuff that's out there, that should at least help steer you home. Start with the public stuff. Now, you came out of regulated industry, Michelle, right?
Yes.
So you came out of financial services and areas where there's a tremendous concern for privacy. And I know video was actively being deployed and used inside of your old world, right?
Correct.
So,
and you have to think of, well, what was used before, and WebEx recordings have been around a long time also in other organizations. So I think you have to evaluate what have you been doing and how does it translate to the new products.
Yeah. The last thing I would say is the world is changing in regards to that, in regards to how much people are posting in the face. So there is a generational aspect to that. We can't ignore that. There's 5 generations in the workforce. So we may have to crawl, walk, run when it comes to using some of these things. But if you demonstrate that it is secured to that group, then I think it's a lot easier. Because the one thing that's true is, I always say we hire people for their skills, but the whole person shows up for work. Their vacations, their family, they're getting ill, like no matter what. And so, how do you get caught up on the meetings and stuff? How do we let people feel more inclusively, how do we be more inclusive and let people participate more? And this is a way to do that. So
yeah, and I would also, in your organization, look at your governance, look at inside of the Teams Admin Center, review the live events policies, and you may determine there's only a subgroup in your company that you want to allow recording. So take a look at all the different options that are out there.
Yeah. All right. By the way, I for some reason the title's not shifting, so this is Doug, and that's not Bruce. That's Michelle, who's hanging out with me. So we'll see if we can get that fixed as we head through it. But hopefully we're all good there. All right. So let's go on to our next topic, which you're kind of leading a little bit more around, and I think we're gonna dive in on a co-authoring, right?
Yeah, we sure are. So I've got a channel under my Team Success April event called Budget. And within Budget, I have plenty of files. So let me go ahead and get Budget to load. All right, so as you see here, I added a new tab. So you can do a few things. You can add any number of files to the Files tab. But then if you find one that's of value, which I did, which is the event budget, I went ahead and I pinned it as a tab. So we'll show you how to do that later. Things are running a little slower here. So you can see when the files load up, there's a bunch of them in there. So we've got expense here, and then we've got, let that load. Okay, and then now event budget. So this is an actual Excel file. So when I clicked on the tab and I added Excel, it brought it in. And because Doug is a part of the team and a part of this channel, he's going to go ahead and co-author with me.
Yeah, so if I come over, I can see the event budget is pinned up, and you're watching me in the lower right-hand corner as a sort of tiny version of that. And you'll notice that here I am inside of the budget, and I can pop in and go ahead and interact with that spreadsheet and be kind of real-time co-authoring with Michelle as soon as hers comes in on top of it. Yeah, well, we're told to be live on the air with everyone's home internet, and we are live on the air with everyone's home internet. Well, we come in, we just so you guys know, like the public stat, we saw in 2 weeks, we saw a massive increase from like 600 million minutes to 2.8 billion minutes per day of like Teams collaboration and conferencing. So people are working in this stuff live. All right, so if
Right.
I go ahead and put in here, and I wanted to put in a little 600 and the little tiny thumbnail on top of that, and as I move around, as soon as Michelle's paints in, she'll be able to live co-author on top of that stuff. So as I come in and put in, $400 on top of it, so we'll have that exact same spreadsheet content interactively edited back and forth between the two of us. Now, if we wanted to, we could open it in the desktop app, or if you wanted to, you can pop this out into its own full window on top of it. But essentially, we get this ability to pin that content that people care about and to have a discussion around it. Now, notice that it shows up over in the discussion. I see it here on the event budget side, right? And if I wanted to pop in and have a chat about that, I can go ahead and come in here and say, I'll just do Megan, can you review? Can you review? And you'll notice that the chat appears alongside the actual spreadsheet itself, but it also appears back in the chat thread inside of the general channel. And so I'm gonna kind of turn myself to the focus element here, just get it widened back out so people can see my side of it along with yours. So now we both got the same ability to come in. I can go ahead and go straight to that document, and notice when I click the link, boom, there we are, and we're in the same spreadsheet going to town on top of that. We have our discussions along the side, numbers are looking good, and you get your normal alerts on top of it. Now, you may be posting these things inside of like the spreadsheet inside of a team, but don't forget, you can also do that stuff inside of one-to-one. So if I come into Michelle and I'm working on top of something with Michelle, notice I normally get these tabs for file organization. Let's say Michelle is one of my employees. I can actually take that same tab and co-authoring capability, and I can pin like a Word document or something else that I wanted to do. I can pin that directly. So if she and I are working on a one-on-one project, in addition to stuff we're working on the teams, don't forget, you can pin those same tabs anywhere within the system. Make sense, everyone? Like everywhere you see a chat or something else, if you have something you're working on with that person. And you can do it even for quote unquote external participants. So like Vanessa and I were working on this event together. We could have pinned the PowerPoint presentation to the one-on-one chat for the two of us and had it sitting there kind of waiting. So I would say this is the power of co-authoring and the power of context, because when I come into this channel, right, I get all the things I need for that dialogue. And I think that's one of the most powerful things. Not only, and you can see there's Michelle in there, you can see where she's editing on top of it. And I'll go ahead and put in the $600 on top of that. And Michelle can see where I'm editing. So I'll flip it around so you can kind of see both sides of that equation. So if we put Michelle on stage, you can see she sees where Doug is and I see where she is inside of the spreadsheet. So as I move around or she moves around, you can actually see which cell we're in and what we're doing on top of it. So we can do cool co-authoring on top of the whole thing. So I put the value in, you can see it popped in, and we're off to the races on top of it. Anyway, so there's the co-authoring and tab pinning inside of Teams. If you haven't used it, we think it's pretty cool. Other co-authoring stuff, Michelle, use cases you see from people?
Yeah, actually, I see a lot of it, especially when it comes to PowerPoint presentations. You can be on other slides, as you know, a few people are throughout the presentation making changes. So the co-authoring on presentations pretty popular. I'd also say things like contracts, where you have legal teams. Right? Yep. Yep. Multiple attorneys needing to be. Yeah, proposals. So yeah, definitely many use cases.
Hey, right, Doug and Michelle, we have an attendee question related to this topic. If you add a file in Teams, does the original live there only? So I think this is around where a file lives once you add it to a team.
Okay, so I guess the question there is it depends. So if you put a file up like Michelle did, uploaded the 2019 expenses, and I'll go full screen on me so you can see. Michelle, you want to then talk through kind of what we're seeing from the file library, and I'll click for you.
Yeah, you bet. So within the channel of a team, you have a tab called Files. Within Files, that's actually the back end is a SharePoint document library folder. Right. And so the channel name is Budget. The folder name inside of SharePoint is also called Budget. When you upload the file, it gets added to that shared document library for you to do co-authoring and collaborating.
So I popped it open. If you look, you'll notice that here we are inside of that Success April event. I just clicked that little button that said open it in SharePoint. And you'll notice here's this document library. We've got budget, closeout, planning in general, right? And then the end user survey that's sitting out there that we played around with, okay? So we got those. And if you look, then there's our general budget, closeout, and planning. You'll notice there was one folder reviewing, so we can foreshadow what we're talking about. You notice you do not see manager review, right? But to answer your question on the documents, there should only be one true copy of the document and everything else should be just a reference or a link to that. Fair?
Yep, that's
right.
Correct.
Yeah, and we want to avoid multiple copies and the rest of it. But if you uploaded one, then the old one's still hanging around wherever you put it. So there are actually using Microsoft Flow and some other things. Some people have publication to put things through stages to different things. So you can get very advanced around content flows. That's why I said it depends. Because you might have a working copy of something in the HR team and have the formal document somewhere else, and then at the end someone hits a button and it publishes it out to that formal place. So you can get very creative with all this stuff if you want to, but in the general, when you upload it, there's one copy and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so pinning documents and tabs within it, those documents then live in a SharePoint library that's within the team. Mm-hmm. And you can look at it from either the SharePoint side or the team side if you want to. And you'll also see it in the Office applications in your My Places. You'd see the Success April event sitting in there. So if you went to File Open in Word, you'd see that place sitting there, and then you could File Open and browse the file library from within Office too. So one file, all places. All right, what do we got next, Michelle?
All right, let's go and move into the general channel. And on the top, there's a tab called MindMeister.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite things. Is anybody else out there a mind mapping person, or is it just me? So this is a third-party example. Now we're going to show it, and then we're going to show you how we did it. So if you come in here, if you were to pop in, notice it pulls up and it puts a mind map in the middle of it. And we just called ours very creatively the Success Stuff mind map. And so I don't know if anybody else is a mind map fan, but again, I am. And if you'll notice, it's shared with two people. You can see there's Michelle Gilbert and the admin, and see how it has Michelle's word is floating in there. And we'll say, live edit, and we'll hit enter on top of it. And then if I wanted to, I could add a little subtopic under live edit and say, don't do it. Right, so that you shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff when you're on the air for your mind maps and everything else. All right, so you get the idea. So you can come in and move your map around and zoom out a little bit to see it, and then you can see Michelle's in there. We're in brainstorming mode, so everybody's adding in, and as Michelle adds stuff on top of it, it'll synchronize it out, and we'll have more and more of these trees build out, and so we can go into live example. The reason I love this example is because it's not actually a service that has anything to do with Teams at all, but it's sitting here in the general channel waiting for us. So I added in a new tab called MindMeister, see when it happened, and we did it yesterday, on Friday, I think it is, when we tossed that one in, and we just tossed this in, and then anyone who comes into this team gets taken instantly to this mind map for this team. So if you liked some mind mapping software, how would you normally link it to this project? Does that make sense? That's why I love this so much. So I'm a brainstormer and a whiteboarder, but if you have a distributed one, and apparently you've added awards and you're working on polls and messing around on top of it, so you can see Michelle's adding stuff in the corner and the map is updating. So this is an example of using somebody else's collaboration cloud service, in this case MindMeister, embedding it in Teams, and Teams is providing all the context and integration. So if we were to add another one, if we came to budget, notice budget doesn't have the mind map. This one does. If we added a mind map to budget, it would be the budget mind map, right? It wouldn't be the same one. And it's super easy to add these things. All you're going to do is hit plus, and any of the ones you've allowed from your organization or the ones you've recently used, they're going to be sitting there. So we're going to go ahead and put this one in. I'll just leave it alone. Do we want to create a new map or use an existing one? So you could, in there, they allow you to do it. So we'll go ahead and hit save on top of it. It's going to go ahead and create that out, post to the team. And here's our fresh new mind map sitting within budget using another cloud service that's ready to go. In this case, this one's going to be associated with the budget channel. So if we're doing this right, we'll come back around to here and we go to there. Now, this is an example of an integrated third-party service that's coming directly inside of Microsoft Teams. And it's one of my personal favorite ones because I'm a mind map guy. So, so I think they are really cool. Now, there's a whole lesson on admin control and which of these cloud services, because you are actually signing in to someone else's cloud service, right? Teams is bringing it all together and putting all of your apps in a nice little wrapper, but you're getting that. And what you decide to allow in this marketplace of all the crazy things that you could do, or the ones that we provide that you can stand up on your own with a private instance. So there's samples that you can go download, and you can stand up your own version of things like badging and meeting tracking and a few other ones. Like, there's all this amazing stuff you can do. So that's really the first third party thing we wanted to show you, is Teams isn't just about Microsoft. The first lesson was recording, going to Microsoft Stream. The second one was embedding documents and tabs and co-authoring using Microsoft Word and Excel and stuff. This one has nothing to do with us other than Teams is the wrapper around it, and still does let you contribute.
Yep, I think it's great add, because really you're bringing in the business systems integration inside of Teams, so you don't have to go out to those locations and work. I see a ton of customers, Doug, that are actually bringing in ServiceNow, Salesforce, so many different applications, so people can work with right in the team and then interact with that product.
Yeah, let's say you're a Salesforce or another CRM system user. You can embed that client's record. Like, say you had a team or even a channel for customers or projects. You can embed that Salesforce or Dynamics or whatever it is tab directly in that team, so you don't have to go hunting for all these tools.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Now, again, it can also just be your launch pad, because if you hit the little web icon, it'll bust it out and take you to that particular thing in a full page web. So you have that ability to do that as well.
Yeah, again, a ton of customers not only are bringing in the third-party apps, but also the first-party apps that we don't really think of, which is you can bring in your SharePoint Online intranet as a tab to your left rail. So you're really, again, creating kind of a one-stop dashboard or shop to see everything, and you get the home page of your intranet. And if you want to go out and get more pages and more information, you certainly can, but definitely customers are using this for accessing everything and being that one first stop to the applications.
Yeah, let's point that out. So we just came over here to the ellipsis on the left-hand side, and we said find an app, and I'm just going to put OneNote in there just because, hey, why not, on top of it. And now notice, if I come back around, if I just go back into either chat or Teams, right, I can pin those individual applications that are on top of it. When I open OneNote, it's over there. But if I right-click and say pin, now OneNote is now permanently there, and I can just pop back in and get to my OneNote whenever I want to from well, we're shrunk super tiny right now, but if you had a larger screen, we tried to blow everything up on top of it. You get to see your list of pinned applications, which are sitting there. The bigger your screen is, the more we give you tiles on top of it. So anyway, you can see there's OneNote pinned. Otherwise, it would be there visually. But we're trying to at least give you a shot at seeing this stuff today.
And it's important to note. It's important to note too, Doug, that what you're pinning on your left rail, soon that same pinning and what you pin here will be on your mobile device. So think about that curation that you can have in Teams and what you can do. It's just getting more robust.
Yeah, more and more of those tabs are working. Some will do what I call a slide, where you'll be in them and you'll tap it and it'll launch you out to that service with hopefully with single sign-on, right? Yep. But the more and more that work directly within, then it's just this elegant sign-on and consumption experience directly within. So we're working really hard, not just on the PC. You and I actually did all the recordings, all the tests on last Friday from our production Microsoft machines, nothing but browser.
Yeah.
Right?
Nothing but browser.
No, and Michelle and I were kind of blown away by how good that's gotten. I hadn't really done one of those in a while, because I'm always working with my primary machine, and I'm mobile device a lot, but I hadn't done browser only in a while, and it was very good. Audio, video, content sharing, like the whole thing. It was impressive, actually. All right, so which is kind of nice if you happen to be borrowing a device or something where you don't want to stain it with a bunch of software. It's pretty handy. Okay, so we've got apps, third-party apps, the ability to bring them in. When you go hit that Teams component, you'll see the ones you have up top, and all those individual tabs are laying across the top. The greater your screen resolution is, the more you'll see, as opposed to having the drop down. And then yes, you can rearrange the order of them and make sure that the ones you want to emphasize are always pinned left, if you will. All right, so other stuff we want to cover on, I don't think on Mind Map, I think that was it, right?
I think that was it, yeah.
Vanessa, do we have any questions on third-party apps?
We do. We have a question. Can you embed a custom CRM system?
Probably. If it has a web experience, almost definitely. How good of a single sign-on experience you'll get is the question. And the more friendly the URL is for letting you put context in, if you will, if it supports like a direct link to a customer record, then you can get that customer pinned in a tab.
Mhm.
So if it has a web interface, it supports, we don't allow clear text websites in Teams though, right? So it has to support modern security. So there's a few security controls, but yeah, you should be able to embed almost anything into a team if you want to. Because if you just come in here and you went to, there's a website control that you can toss in and then you're off to the races. So yes. And if you need to automate it, there's even some more nerdy options for scripting and automation and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of control options you have there out there. All right, what's up next?
Let's go to our handy dandy notebook. So on the general tab, there should be the OneNote notebook from that SharePoint site.
I'm gonna put you center stage. And I will follow along.
All right, so as OneNote is pulling up, I see customers doing this a lot in the space of meetings, agendas, and every week when they have their weekly meeting, they have a new page. So it's easy to go back. You can actually co-author at the same time to show that multiple people are taking meeting notes, and anything you need to come back to, it's all registered here, keeping it contained on this tab of what we're working in or what we're working on. So here I've got the welcome page. Go ahead and get rid of this prompt. Let it load up a second. So what we did here is we just took a screenshot and we pasted it right into the page. You click
very high tech. Now, right now, just a reminder, we're only allowing editing if you go out. So we're not actually allowing live edits within. So in order to preserve performance for it, so if you click the little globe, so they had an announcement on top of that, say, got it. Now we can come in here and we have full control over the page and we can mess around and add content or retitle it. Welcome. This is cool.
Yep.
So I can switch back over to here.
There you
right,
go.
so you can see there we both got it up and we're ready to go. So I can edit the page and do whatever we want to for OneNote documents and everything else. I don't know if anybody else is a huge OneNote fan. I am.
Oh, I'm a huge OneNote. I think I live in OneNote. I have everything that my whole life really of what I'm doing is in OneNote. So
yep.
all the conferences, all the note taking, all my customer notes, you name it.
I did want to point out that even in the web, you do get the ability to do dictation on top of it, right? So if you hit that little ellipsis on top of it, it says, hey, this thing wants to use your microphone, and then we're on the air. I actually have my headset, so I'd have to hold it up, but then you can see it'll start transcribing my notes. So if you're a note taker from voice, if you're better at that than you are at typing, you get all that. So no matter where you go, you get that capability within the tooling on top of it. So pretty cool. You get full OneNote capability embedded inside of Microsoft Teams. Right,
and let's not forget the immersive reader. So as I'm in here, I may have something else. Again, we did earlier, I heard you talking about multitasking. If you're not using all your senses, then you're not multitasking. So you can click on the immersive reader, have it read to you while you're in another screen putting together an email. So you get a lot of different capabilities.
So it puts it in stay focused on top of things. All right. So we got the immersive reader, which is pretty cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else from our OneNote side?
I think this is it. This is where, yeah. And just to clarify, again, this is a OneNote notebook that lives inside a SharePoint site. So when you create a team, automatically you do have a OneNote notebook that you can just simply add as a tab inside of your channel.
Yep, and those notebooks are secured to that team so that any notebook you create on top of it. So documents, notebooks, meeting recordings, third-party application services, websites, all sorts of stuff. All right. Next up, let's talk about, maybe you could take us through the privacy on private channels.
Sure. So now, as of just a last few months here, we have the ability to create private channels. So I don't know if you want to blow me up. I'm a little more delayed than you are, it looks like, Doug, but
No, that's all right.
Okay. So at the team level, I can right click on the ellipsis and I can create a new channel. When it comes up, you can see create channel. So add channel. See how quickly it'll appear. Thank you for zooming in. Appreciate it.
Again,
There we go.
live home internet is what it is.
And here's the privacy. So this is where I can say, I want a private channel. I see the use case for this being a couple people inside of that group. So the permissions of who can be in this private channel are a subgroup of whom already is in that team. So we have quite a few people on this team for the Success April event. I wanted just Doug and I to have a manager space. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get out of here and watch how slow it will take for it to get out. But I'm going to cancel. And when you create one, what occurs is that you get a padlock. So after the name of your channel, you have a padlock indicating that you have a private space for you and whomever you've added as a member to that channel. The other members of the team do not see this. The only person who does see it is a team owner or team owners. So let me go ahead and click in it. You'll see.
That's important. I just want to cover that. So if you and I were not a member of the manager review channel, we would not even see that such a group exists. So if you wanted to say Doug's termination plan, right? Unless I was the owner, I couldn't see it, right? Like firing Doug on Friday, right? So you couldn't see that. But if I'm the owner, I can see it. Yes. So, or if I'm a member of it, I will see it. So it's possible if I was like sharing my desktop or something to someone else, they would see like the Fire Doug channel, right? So don't, if it is truly sensitive, don't label it with something that you never want the label to be seen. Does that make sense for people? So like, use a little common sense when it comes to security on it. Because if you're ever like, on with the help desk, I don't know, 20 to sale of company plan, right? Just like use a little common sense when it comes to your channel layout. All right.
Yeah, anything that's broad that you have for NDA, create a separate team and make sure you have the right people in there. That's definitely my recommendation.
Agreed. I just
this is a nice way to just have a subgroup where Doug and I can have a conversation about, for instance, performance of our event or our event planners, and just really have this subspace. I think this is a take from the old classic, hey, I have a SharePoint site, I need a subsite, or I need a sub-document library that's private, super duper private. That's really where this request came out of, from the team's user voice, voted all the way up to the engineers, and now it's rolled out.
And it is important to note, so you and I are in here, and if you could do me a favor, so like try and just mention Doug, like in there. So if you just reply to that thread and you were to start typing Doug, right, within that chat channel right there, that would allow you to see that, or I can go full screen if you're still lagging. Oh, there it is. So notice how it pops up Doug, right? So she can pick me. But if you were to start typing someone who's not a member of this channel, like Megan, it won't even resolve. So as you start to type, at Megan's name, like it won't pop because you can't address someone who's not in that channel. It's like the address book is masked. So, right. And it should be. I think that's exactly what we're talking about. There's no way. Didn't find any matches, right? So that's exactly the result we would expect. And if you remember when we were over in the SharePoint side, you didn't see, you can still go to files and there's still a file section, but you didn't see those files inside of the SharePoint. Like those files were not there, and they shouldn't be there because everyone else would have access to. So it means you're establishing an entire separate file repository for this channel. So there is a little under the covers to say, the files are living secured in a different location. The conversations are secured to a different group. So one of the first things we say is if it doesn't really need to live in the same context, just use a separate team.
Yep, that really makes sense.
Right, back to our point. Like, don't add a channel to the. If you're a smaller company with 75 people and you have an all company channel, don't add the company selling the company channel and secure it. Make a new team. It's a better security boundary.
Right.
Make it
Right.
private. Hide it from the directory. Like, use. It's probably an extreme example, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Any other guidance for people on private channels from what you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say just if you are worried about orphan private channels, just feel good that the private channels are also located in the team's admin center under managed teams. So your team admin can go in there, review it, remove it, look at the members. So you do have administrative control.
All right, so there's a rescue in the event.
Yes.
There was some private channels and you're like, oh, Vanessa quit and she was the only person, let's say Vanessa, Brandon, and Alex all leave and they were the people who owned that private channel. I'm sure that would never happen at Success, but if you all won the lottery, right, let's be positive about this, and you're like, I'm out. There is still a way for an administrator to get in. And of course, that event is audited. So we can't just have administrators doing things without control. So we got all that going on.
That's right.
All right. So Vanessa, any questions on private channels? Any of that stuff?
No questions on, well, just kidding. For HR, could we have a supervisor team for team communications owned by HR, but then separate private channels for each supervisor to address ER issues with them individually?
Yeah, the only thing to note about that approach, and Michelle, I'm curious. Well, you take first swing at that one. I'm curious.
So, Vanessa, you're saying HR as a whole having a team, and then each channel being each supervisor having their own private channel to address any issues?
Yeah, I think that's the question.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to understand what's the purpose of a private channel. There's a difference of chat conversation versus a channel, and a channel really brings in the culmination of both the communication and the collaboration. Do you need a files tab, a whole separate SharePoint site? And that's really what happens when you create a private channel for kind of a private space for the supervisor. So I think you have to think through what's the purpose of having that private space? Do you need all that?
And if
That's
you do,
my take.
If you do, the only thing I would say is, say you made that one called like the manager side. If you could do it, if you had like an HR manager's team, and then have separate channels for the individual small locations or support, whatever you want to do. But remember, the general channel is always going to be accessible to everyone, because you can't secure the general channel. I mean, the whole point is that everyone has some place they can rally to. So just be a little cautious, but if you can make the model work within that, then sure. I do think, Michelle, your point is, should that just be a chat session?
Yeah.
With those people invited? Because don't forget, you don't have to make a team for everything. Like I have for my team, we have this chat, we renamed it, called the MSP MTC chat, and it's everybody from the Minneapolis MTC, and we're all in this chat channel. It's not a team, it's just a chat session. So to Michelle's, what you were saying was, if you don't need the files and stuff, then don't make a private channel, just have a chat.
And you can have, and realize your chat is your chat to whom you invite. Nobody can come into your chat without you being very targeted to add them. So you can add a few people, rename it, like you could even rename it private HR chat with whomever, but you can, be very deliberate on how to have a private communication.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that was answering that one. You could do either approach, chats or secured channels. Just remember the general channel.
Yep. And I do want to point out too, just to clarify, your channels are they're not public. So you can create a public or a private channel. Public, anyone can join, and private, you, by the owner, you have to be invited.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see what else we got. Ooh, one of our favorites.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I'm
ready.
See
how if your internet's still slow, then you can just tell me and I'll just click, and you can just tell me what to click on. So go ahead and fire it up. Next, where are we going next?
I sure did. And it still hasn't. We are going to the planning channel. This is all things planning. So whomever your planner is, maybe you throw in marketing people in here. But what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a planner plan to plan this event. So
right,
let's
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
get me going. I'm gonna move you way over to the left on a
Please
thumbnail.
do.
I'm gonna get me zoomed in. We're gonna go like that,
A
and
lot
hopefully
of
that'll
kids.
that'll get us going. All right, so we're gonna go to the. You tell me what to click on, and I will click.
Okay, go ahead and click on the tab for event plan. All right, so just a little introduction. Planner is a lightweight task management tool. So you've got your tasks, your to-do. That's really your personal task management. Then you've got this middle ground here, which is planner. And I think this is fantastic for event planning, for project planning at kind of a lightweight level, and then all the way to project and project online. So to me, this middle ground. I absolutely love it. The ability to have buckets of information that could be going all the way from what to do, your different statuses, your preps. You can assign different tasks to people. They'll get a notification that they now have a task assigned to them. And then you can see the progress inside a chart. So go ahead and why don't you show some of the things that we put together.
Yeah, so first, if you look across the top, you'll see these buckets, the to-dos Michelle talked about on top of it. And here are all the individual tasks that we put in, and they're all assigned to people. So let's go ahead and look right here. So for presenters, right, there's confirm the presenters, right, on top of it. And as soon as you check it, it goes to completed, and you can see which ones have been completed or hide that. You've got the ability to come down and look at the individual tasks, like who's assigned to it, and what are the individual elements for the checklist that are associated to that. So pretty powerful, lightweight to-do task planning. We use this inside of Microsoft for everything.
I know I certainly do.
Yeah.
Valerie, it looks like you're in the screen today.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm up next, so I just.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So Val's coming up next on top of it, but so we got our plans on and things on over here. So we got prep and execute that are available from our bucket standpoint, and then we have our debrief tasks as well. There's a lot of those have my name on it. I didn't do a good enough job of deflecting to others.
I might have assigned a few things to you, but take a look at charts. I think not just being able to put things together in buckets of information, but now I can see actual status, and
right.
I can see there's something late. I bet that might be you, Doug. You're late on something. Yeah, you can see the status here. You can also filter it, so I think that's kind of fun. Oh, it looks like you're going to be tagging me.
I am too slow. Please do my work. Okay, there we go. So now I've successfully delegated in context to the plan. All right. So there we go. So you can see the tasks that are available, and of course, if you wanted to, this is kind of all sort of. You can look at how many you got in each bucket and all that stuff.
And when managing a team, I think it's pretty interesting because you can group it by assigned to. So as you see there, you've got all the members, all tasks assigned to them. Red meaning they're late, so it looks like I might be behind on something too. So it's a great way, just really simple, really easy to manage your tasks. And then if you look, the calendar.
It is clickable for like when you go in, it filters down on the side as to what's late. And I am. Every time we do something for we have this thing called mod sprints and stuff, and this is where all across the U.S. the technology centers plan things through Planner, and we kind of track how we doing for contribution to projects and everything else. There's obviously the more sophisticated project portfolio management, but this one's pretty cool. And to your point, schedule view.
Yeah, I mean, just really nice calendar. So think of if you're not needing anything as robust as project. But something kind of middle of the ground, I think this is absolutely fantastic.
All right. So we've got, so if we kind of recap across, what do we let's do our harbor tour of where we're at. We showed off meeting recordings, and then we'll end off with our forms thing, right?
Yep.
And the ability to have meeting recordings. We showed off co-authoring in the budget channel around putting in and embedding commonly accessed documents directly as tabs for increased findability and collaboration. Because let's be honest, people are bad at finding the real copy of a document. If you pin it to a tab, they're never confused. Just put the document right there for the people. And if you say, well, what you need to do is you need to go into the team and you need to go into here. Then you go to the file tab and then you open the, oh, for crying out loud, just name it the budget and post it in a tab, right? And then everybody's got the right thing and they don't have to think. Because when I want to get stuff done, I don't want to think, I want to work.
Yep.
Third-party stuff like MindMeister, which again, not just about us, it's about all those third-party things that you have on top of it, which is pretty cool. And then we have the planner integration on top of things, meeting recordings, a bunch of stuff. So we've shown you all those first-party ones. And we got one more really cool one, which I didn't have on my list for official, but we want to talk about forms as well. And we have enough time to do so. Vanessa, can we get a time check? We have a few minutes left, yes? Or are we at?
We are just dipping into our 10-minute break that we had scheduled.
We only got one more. We got one more thing, and people can check it out on their own. Because we wanted to show you guys a little kind of how some of these things came into being as well. So you notice in our general channel, we actually did a form as well. So if you look on a tab, we added one more component to it where we just generated a survey for on top of it. And in our closeout, notice we did the little plus sign, and we tossed in a Microsoft form from the list that's on there. And then we made this end user survey on top of it. And so I think you guys might be using the survey on top of this for it. And we're just like, how do we do on the event and what can we do better? So we took that survey, we published it out, and then we tossed in the general channel for all of our people who could go then click on that survey, and then it would then take them out to the form where someone could fill out and get access to that survey. So we tried to show you all the elements of planning an event within it, a brainstorm, like some initial discussions and a meeting that we recorded so everyone could get access to it. We created the budget. We had a manager's channel for some security to talk about the fact that, maybe some people should be part of the event, maybe others should not. And we went through how to use third-party stuff, co-authoring, surveying, planning, the whole 9 yards. So hopefully that was a good beyond meetings discussion of what you can do within Microsoft Teams. So any final Q&A before we head into our break, which we're now 2 minutes late into?
Yes, one last question here as it relates to Planner. So can you save an entire set of plans for events that recur, say a couple times a year?
Short answer is yes. There's a couple of different ways to do that. And so it's possible to clone plans, if you will, and then bring them back in. I'm not sure how flexible it is on reassigning the dates and stuff. I haven't played much, but I know people have done that. And if it's something we can work with the success team and get that out later on, the guidance on how to do that. It might be a little nerdy, I'll warn you. Sometimes there's a GUI for things, and sometimes we're on Microsoft, we release it as scripts. So I won't promise that it will be visually compelling, but I'm pretty sure there's a way to do that I've seen people do.
Yep, in my experience, we've kind of done, we make a template that you copy over from event to event. So
yeah, exactly. Yep.
All
so
right,
there's a couple different ways to do it. So fire away.
Last question. So for the various apps that we've been highlighting, is there a cost for some of these?
The only app is any third-party app that you may not either already own or that does have a cost to it.
Yeah, MindMeister has a free version, so they have a freemium model, and so it would depend on how much. But I wanted to show one third-party one to show you coming in. And obviously, if you were to embed Salesforce, I make no comments on what they're going to charge you or someone else. But there's a whole bunch of people who have freemium add-ins, and we tried to show nothing but. At MindMeister may be the only one where there was a little line crossed because I don't know which trial version I had active when I showed the features. So there's some caps on it for different levels, so I'm not quite sure about that one, but everything else was included or free with Office 365. We tried to show every Microsoft thing was included in O365. So we stayed in the web the whole time. So even, I don't think we even showed anything beyond a frontline worker functionality today, did we?
Nope.
Yeah, no. So you'd own this almost no matter what SKU of Office 365 you own.
Well, thank you. That looks like that's all the questions for now.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to mute audio on our side, put the roller up, give you all I don't know, 6 to 10 minutes. We'll come back probably on time, 10:30ish. Michelle, thank you for joining. Sorry you had slow internet, and then I had to be I had to drive more, but we made it through. And the rest of the broadcast is held pretty steady, I think. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Grab a cup of coffee, a glass of water, bio break, whatever you want to do, and then we'll be back in a few minutes. I'm going to be queuing up Valerie, so you may hear us chat as we get her queued up. But we'll be online, and we'll be doing a little Power BI with Valerie here quickly.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. All right. So again, you will not hear roll music, but you will probably hear commentary from us as we go through. Valerie, would you be kind enough to live up your camera so I can cut over?
I have it live.
Yep, and now we see you, so you're on the air, at least almost.
Okay, so I actually have 2 devices going right now, and I was hoping to just use one. I can't drop and rejoin this without causing issues, right?
If Vanessa is willing to let you back in, you surely can.
I'm more than willing to help.
Okay, so I'm gonna turn my camera and microphone off, but stay in this meeting just in case I have any issues.
Yeah,
and then
we're live on the air with customers right now, so that's fine too. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Are you able to see me and hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Can't see you quite yet.
Okay. Hopefully it says it's coming. I wonder if I should turn it off and back on.
And more importantly, Val, if you could make sure Rendezvous is up and sending your content, because I'm not seeing content from you at the moment.
How's that?
So far, nothing.
Huh.
But I'm going to reconnect and see if I got it. So you're doing a screen share from Rendezvous?
I am sharing my screen from Rendezvous, and then I have the Teams live event joined with my camera on there. Should I drop it?
No, I can hear you just fine. So let's work on the content one thing at a time.
Okay.
And let's get the content, maybe leave and rejoin Rendezvous for the content share.
Okay. I'm going to drop out of the Teams meeting then, because when I tried to join Rendezvous after being in the Teams event,
I'll chat with you. That's all good. Yep, I'll chat with you on the chat session on offline, and we'll get your content first and then the Teams meeting. Thank you.
Okay. So are we set, Doug?
Yeah, I think so. I got all the content and everything. So I'm going to put your desktop on the air here in a minute. So let me know when you're ready to have that shown.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
Actually, you know what? Give me one more second. I'm going to switch back over to here because I'm going to go to here. Okay, now I'm ready.
All right. All right. Well, believe it or not, we actually got all that cut over with our live joining our presenter and everything else. So, so there we go.
Okay, so I'm actually going to set up because I like that better.
Awesome.
Okay. Can you see me okay?
Yeah, see you and hear you. Great. So we are, and we're at 10:30. We ran a little late, so let's give people like 1 or 2 minutes to get back. While we're doing that, you want to do a brief intro?
Sure. Hi, everybody who's on. My name is Valerie Bergman, and I'm a Microsoft technical architect, and I work with Doug and Michelle out of the Minneapolis location. And today I am going to be sharing information with you about Power BI. And my expectation for today's session is that there could be people on who have never used Power BI, and we may have some people who do have some familiarity with Power BI, but I was going to start out with level set, and then I was going to show you guys how we can create a Power BI report from the starting point of getting the data through cleaning the data a little bit, creating some visualizations, and then publishing out the report to a workspace so that I can collaborate with you. So I was going to take you through a quick end-to-end. And the quick end-to-end that I take you through is not going to be exhaustive of all of the features and all of the things that you can do in Power BI. So I also am going to share with you a deck, and the deck has a little lower level details than everything that we're going to cover today, to just kind of get you interested and to point you in the right direction if you want to do some of your own work. I'm also going to give you guys a link to a content for something that's called Dashboard in a Day. So when our MTCs are open and we are having events in our locations, once a month we have a Dashboard in a Day session that is run by different partners. And the Dashboard in a Day session, it gives you the soup to nuts, everything about Power BI. And there's a really great curriculum that was written around that walks you through very prescriptively how to create some more robust dashboards than the one that I'm going to show you today. So I can give you guys a little sneak peek about what you would be creating if you went through the Dashboard in a Day content. I want to put that in your hands in case you have interest in playing more on your own, learning more on your own, or understanding how others in your company can use Power BI. So should I get going? Doug, what do you think?
I had to unmute. Yes, I think it is time. Let's begin.
Okay, so maybe we'll start you right out with the references. These references are going to be posted by Vanessa into our little publish site of the chat window. We will also get you this deck, and the deck includes these references, so you don't have to write them all down today. But that Dashboard in a Day content is the first link that I have for you. And then I also gave a Power BI overview. The documents on Microsoft.com are exhaustive to the level the Dashboard in a Day even isn't. So this is a great jumping off point if you want to start with an overview and then dig into some specific details about how Power BI works and examples of how you can use it. So that is what that second link is. So with that, I am going to, before I hop into showing you the cool dashboard that we're going to build today, I wanted to give you a very quick overview of the term Power BI. And why I wanted to do this is Power BI, and you're seeing my whiteboard, right? So yep. Power BI is kind of this umbrella term. There are a lot of products that are underneath this Power BI umbrella. So we have Power BI, and when someone says that they're using Power BI, I want you to understand that there are different technologies that are included in that family so that you understand what I show you today, and so that you also understand how you could use Power BI inside of your organization. So we're going to be spending a lot of time today in the Power BI desktop. So the Power BI desktop is a product that you could install on your local computer, and this is the authoring tool. The authoring tool of Power BI desktop is very powerful. That's where we'll be cruising through. It is a free download. I know that administrators inside of your organization have the ability to decide whether you're going to allow your employees to download Power BI desktop to use or not, but the download itself is free. It will auto update. So if there is a new feature that comes out in Power BI, it will prompt the user to get the new version when they open up Power BI desktop. Again, administrators have some control over what you will allow to happen there, but the desktop tool is the authoring tool. So that's free for all. I've even gone through this desktop tool with high school students to show them how they could leverage it when they're creating reports for their teachers or whatever. So just so you know, free tool. And once you get into a cost is if you want to publish. So when you want to publish, I'm going to go over here. When you publish a Power BI report, you can publish it into a couple different places. You can publish it to Power BI, Power BI service. So the Power BI service is the cloud hosted by Microsoft portal where you can publish out reports and dashboards that you have built. There is a fee for using the Power BI service, so there is a licensing model for that. And the licensing model for the Power BI service can be broken down into a per user license. The per user license is called Power BI Pro. There's also a dedicated license for your organization, and that is called Power BI Premium. So you can see we have a lot of Power BI prefixes with a lot of words after it, and that's why I wanted to make sure you understood kind of how these all fit together. So Power BI Pro is a per user license. In order to read from the Power BI service or publish into the Power BI service, you need to be a user who has a Power BI Pro license, unless your organization has gone with Power BI Premium, which is a dedicated environment for your organization. There is not a per user licensing for the Power BI Premium model. Now, in addition to the Power BI desktop and the Power BI service, you might want to author some Power BI reports that you want to put inside of other applications, and you may want to share those outside of the walls of your organization. So there is also something called Power BI Embedded. So Power BI Embedded allows you to author Power BI reports and publish them into another solution. So they'll get wrapped by the other solution so that you can share something that you have built outside of the wall of the organization, or in a way that whoever's looking at the Power BI report, they don't even necessarily know that what they're looking at is Power BI. So that is another part of the Power BI umbrella. And then we also have Power BI Server. So Power BI Server is the next version of SQL Server Reporting Services server that you could host inside of your private cloud or inside of or on premises. So Power BI Server is not feature parity with the Power BI service. So the Power BI service is hosted by Microsoft. The Power BI Server is something that you can install local, but Power BI Server does have the ability to allow you to publish Power BI reports internally and use them internally. So that's kind of the world of Power BI. Today, we are going to take a look at the Power BI desktop. So we're going to look here, and then we are going to take a quick peek into the Power BI service. So I am going to hop us over into this space. So what we're looking at here is we are looking at Microsoft's implementation of our Power BI portal. So this is the Power BI service as Microsoft uses it. And inside of the Power BI service, you have workspaces. Workspaces are areas where you can publish reports out to, and you can secure things at the workspace level. Administrators can also determine who is allowed to publish to which workspace inside of your organization. So what you're seeing here is my personal workspace. So I have other workspaces that I have access to, but here is my personal workspace where I have been publishing out my reports that I've created. So I'm going to take you to this report. So if we go and look at this report is called World Population. And during our time, we are going to be building together this world population. I'm going to show you how quickly I was able to generate this report. And before I go into that, I wanted to show you some of the features that you get with Power BI out of box, which I don't know who's on the call as far as you guys have published reports in the past. I personally used to, like 10, 15 years ago, I used to write SQL Server Reporting Services reports. I've also authored Crystal reports. And after spending a good part of a year focusing on only report writing, I decided that I would tell everyone I didn't know how to write reports, because there was a lot of time that I would spend on just the visual aspect, making my reports line up correctly, making everything look professional. And if I would have wanted to build a report like this one that I'm going to show you here right now, it would have taken me a long time. I'm guessing like we're talking 4 to 6 months at least for me to author something like this if I had been doing it myself prior.
Hey Valerie, we had a brief pause for like 30 seconds. So the last 30 seconds or so were gone. So we lost internet.
Did you hear about the workspaces?
We heard that you are pretending ignorance of BI reports. And that because you didn't like authoring them, and so I think the point is that it's easier to author them this way, right?
Oh gosh, but I mean, it's saying it's easier is not a good. It doesn't capture how much easier, not how much more quickly I can get to a visualization that I can publish, but also how much richer the experience is inside of Power BI solution than I was able to replicate inside of just a paginated kind of flat report. So the Power BI reports are made up of these visual tiles, and you have the ability to pick how many tiles you want to show on your report. You can size them just by dragging. I will show you that in a minute. But so this report here that we're looking at is not only nice looking, but it's interactive and the tiles all work together. So if you notice over here, I am showing population by country, and China has the largest population of any country in the world. Over here in the side, I am seeing a map. And if I hover over any of the map dots, it will show me the country that I'm looking at, the population, and what rank they are. Now, if I click on one of these over here, you'll notice that this tile on the left-hand side highlighted what I was clicking on. And down here, this also highlighted what I was clicking. China isn't in this list. So if I come down here and I click on to view, if I don't know if I pronounced that properly, actually, you can see over here where it is in the map. So there is this navigational interaction between the tiles that just comes out of box. So I didn't have to do anything special to set this up. This is just how it works. So this would have been very difficult to replicate prior to me using Power BI. The other thing that you can do inside of this report dash that comes out of box is you have the ability to, let's see, I'm going to come over to this one. So for this one, I would like to look at the data. So show me the data that's behind this graph. So I just clicked on a link and I got to this view on the bottom here that shows me all of the data that's fed into this report. So an example of why this is powerful is I have published reports before, executive dashboards, and almost immediately the first thing that will come up is an executive will look at the graphic and they'll be like, huh, I don't understand where that number came from. Show me where that came from, which in the past I would have had to go back and I would have had to gather the data. So here, there's the ability for users of the report to drill in to see the detail that's driving the report. There's also the ability, and I don't use dates in here, there's also the ability when you're using different types of data to drill into different levels. So for example, I could show revenue numbers. If this were a sales dashboard, I could show revenue number by year, totals by year, and then I could do a drill down if I wanted to see it by quarter, if I wanted to see it by month, or if I wanted to see it by day, which would give the person who's using this dashboard the ability to drill in to figure out what's going on with my numbers. Why does that number look different than I would have expected? So another thing that we have here in this report is we have this Q&A. Q&A is a natural language understanding control that you can drop into the reports to allow people who are using your reports to try to interact with the data to get that, hey, tell me what's going on here, next level question. So I had asked the question, what are the 10 smallest countries? So up here in this graphic, I showed you the 10 countries that had the largest population. This map shows all of the countries, but it's pretty hard, even though the bubbles are sized differently. If there's a larger population, I can't tell by looking at this map over here what the smallest one is, so tell me that. So I asked, what are the 10 smallest countries, and got back this list, Vatican City. Let's see, I am gonna say, which country has ranked, has a rank of 100 for one. Let's see, look at that, there we go. So Sierra Leone is the 100th biggest populated or most populous country in the world. And I can click on that Sierra Leone, say, where's that again? There it is. And there's the population. So the point is that the Power BI reports give this very rich experience to your user base without you as a report publisher having to go through and hand code all of this. So I created this report without writing any code. So now I'm going to hop in and show you how I did that. So we are going to start from scratch because what can go wrong on a live webinar when I do that? So here we go. I opened up Power BI Desktop, and when I opened up Power BI Desktop, it's giving me a little helper here. Do I want to start with data? Do I want to just blank, do I want to open something I've opened in the past? So let's start with data. So I'm going to go get some data. Oh, and I'm going to show you where we're going to get our data from. So we are going to get our data from here. So Wikipedia published out a list of countries and their population. So I want this to be my data source. The reason why I'm picking this data source is twofold. We have a little bit of cleansing that we can do on this data after we pull it in. And I also wanted to show you how easy it is to go and grab data that might not live within the walls of your organization. So here we go. We're going to grab this list for our get data. So when I say get data, I am presented with a bunch of options for how I can go and get data. These are called connectors. There's a connector library that has over 80 different connectors that have been predefined and built into our product set. The connector list is always growing, so we're always adding additional connectors. The connectors include the ability to connect to cloud-based resources as well as on-premises resources, as well as resources that you may in the past have not considered to be an option, like a website or maybe a PDF. So when we say that we want to grab data, in this case, I'm going to take us out to a web location and I'm going to get data from there. When I say connect, I have a few options. So I am just going to put in this Wikipedia page, but if I wanted to, I could append some variables to my query string. So if I needed to pass in parameters, I have the ability to do that. I don't need to do that here. So I'm going to say, okay. When I say okay, what's happening behind the scenes is we are going into that. So actually Power BI is going to that web page and it's crawling through the web page and it is looking for content that it feels might be data that I would want to use in my report. One little step that you didn't see because I've connected to this data source before, whenever you connect to a new web data source, I have the ability to say whether I want to connect anonymously or if I want to pass some credentials in. So if you're trying to connect to a data source that is secure and requires login, you can pass in login information as well. So you have the ability to control access rights as well. So here we go. On this page in Wikipedia, Power BI has crawled through and has found 3 potential data sets that we could use. So there's this one. This is just the document information that was discovered in the HTML. That's not what I want. So over here, I'm getting a preview of the data that Power BI has found, so I can look through and verify whether that is what I'm looking for. So this one is looking good. Let's look at this table 1. Is there anything I want there? No. Okay, so then I would like to use this set of information. I can load it up right away into my Power BI report, or I can pick to transform it on its way in. One nice thing about the Power BI experience here is I can't goof things up. So if I decide to load it, but I really wanted to transform it, that's okay, because after the data loads, I have the ability to go back and continue my transformations. So I can't back myself into a corner. I'm also going to show you how, as we are transforming data, I'm not able to goof things up either. So now our data has loaded in, which our palette here doesn't look much different than it did a second ago, although you may have noticed that some fields have shown up over here on the right-hand side. So we have this sovereign states table that was discovered on that page, and these are the fields that were discovered in that data source. So Power BI just quickly pulled that all in for us. When I'm over here on my left-hand side, this icon here is showing us that we are currently in preview of our report palette. So that's this whole space here. If I click down one, I can look at the data that we have that's behind our report. So this is what was just pulled in for us. And then this bottom one gives me the ability to model data. So if I wanted to join other data sources in order to get more information about the countries that I have, that we are referencing here, I could do that and I could relate those tables together. Power BI will help me with the relationships. We'll try to figure them out for me. But if Power BI doesn't, I have the ability to drag and drop column or field matching in order to do the modeling. So I'm going to go back here in my data, and what we want to do here is we would like to do some transformations on our data. And I'm going to show you why. So as I was inspecting the data, I noticed some things that could use some cleaning up. First of all, I see that we have the rank, the country, and the population is part of my data set, and I would like that to just be a header. There we go. I took that out of my data set. Another thing that I noticed as I scroll down here is I have some dependent territories that are showing up in here that don't have a ranking because their numbers are already included inside of the country that they're dependent upon. So I would like to get those fields out of here. So what I want to do now is, and as I can see too, because of these dashes, I have my rank column is set up as a string, and I would like my ranks to be set up as numeric values so that I can do things like put them in bar graphs and order by them. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to change these to whole numbers. When I do that and I scroll down, I will notice that I have some errors in here, because a dash does not translate nicely into a number. So I am going to do cleaning here. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of those rows that have errors. So now when I remove the errors and go down, we're looking a lot better. Oh, except for I see one issue still. Down at the bottom, I have a country that's called world, and it has the world population. I can sum together all of the populations in my report if I like, but world isn't a location. So I'm going to remove one more row. I'm going to remove my bottom row. So I'm going to remove my one bottom row, say OK, and now all of my number fields for rank look like they are good. So the reason I wanted to show you this is as I'm going through here, I am, without writing any code or any SQL, I am able to go through and cleanse my data. So if I'm someone who's familiar with Excel, I have the ability to go and self-serve. Over here on the right-hand side, we have applied steps. This shows everything I've done. So this is where I said I can't accidentally mess up my data. If I want to put the errors back in, I could just X this out and it would add those fields back in. So here's my data. Let's see. Another thing that I wanted to do is we're good on country. Our population here looks good. It's a number. We have percent of world population. And then we have this date. And the date is showing up as ABC. And I don't want the date to show up as ABC. I would like the date to show as, so I'm going to create here a new column. So again, I'm just trying to show you how easy it is to add and update your data. So I'm going to say as of date. And in here, I want to create this transform this April, I just want to transform this date format into a date format that is recognized as a date. So I'm going to do that. And when I tab down to the next field, Power BI has crawled through the dates column and has tried to determine what my dates should be. So it's made a guess for me on how I wanted this translation to work. And as I scroll down here, we are looking good. So I'm going to say, OK. So there we go. No code, but I was able to translate this. I don't want this anymore, so I'm going to get rid of the state field. OK. So that was just a quick showing of how we have the ability to do transforms. So I'm going to close this up. And this pulls here. Let's see. It's applying my changes to my data. And there we go. Now, one thing that it did here is it now changed my population. It took away the formatting. So I'm going to put some formatting in here. In my percent of world population, I want that to show up as a percent again. There we go. So I've now gone through and showed you how we can do some cleansing of our data very quickly. So we've connected to our data source, we've cleansed our data, and now I want to start getting to the good stuff and build visuals. So I'm going to click here into my, and I'm just going to start picking fields that I would like to include. So I want to know for each country what its population is. So I just clicked on for each country population, show me what you got. And Power BI inspected the data types of the fields that I selected when I was clicking the box and has proposed to me that I might want to use a map visual. If I didn't want to use a map visual, I could switch to other visualization over here just with the click of a button. But I like that map visual. So we have this map visual, but the thing with map visual is there's a whole bunch of dots. And I don't need to see Antarctica. So there's a whole bunch of dots showing up in this visual, but it's difficult for me to navigate because I think there are 195 countries in this data set. So if I want to get to one of these European countries, it's going to be tough for me to hop in there. Most want to see is what's most important to me is I really want to understand which countries are biggest. And so I want to see the country by size. So I'm going to create another visual. I love this visual. I love the ability to click around the map, but I'd like another visual that ties to this information as well. So I'm going to say country population again. It gave me the map, but this time I want to switch it to a bar graph. So now here I have the countries by population. So this is kind of a big, long graph as well. And I think what would be most insightful for my users is if we could just see the top. So I'm going to click on here and I'm going to filter down this visual. So I would like to filter down this visual. I want to see the top 10 countries, but I want to see them by population. So I'm just drag down over this population here and apply it. And now we can see the top 10. In a very short period of time here, we have a map and we have my bar graph. Well, maybe on my map a little bigger. There we go. Maybe a little taller even. So it's easier for my users to get around and maybe click on one of those dots. So the other thing that I'd like to do is I would also like to let my users interact with my data. So I'm going to put in here this Q&A control. So this Q&A control that's all I need to do. So if we want to test it out, I had said, what are the 10 least populated Now, when I wrote this out, typo, which I had a bunch of typos, let's see. You can see that we are getting feedback that says, hey, we're not sure. So we're going to give you some examples of what you might want to say. So we might need to say this different. What are the 10 countries? The smallest. Again, live typing. Wrong. There you go. Okay. So Power BI here is trying to help me out, which it's showing me population of the smallest population. I'm going to try this a different angle. We have rank on here. Which countries? Which are the 5? There we go. So when we click on one of these, it's going to show us that this one is India, although this isn't working quite well. But my point is that without doing a lot of work, I was able to drop in this Q&A, and we can allow our users to interact with the data and get to some of their own insights. So I wanted to show one more thing before we hop into the publish. So I liked this map, but I also was thinking if we're trying to show country by country, maybe I could get another map view to go along with this. I wanted to kind of highlight some of the other visuals that we had here. So I'm going to click again in my blank space, country, population. Power BI is like, oh, I see you picked a geography, so let me start you out with. But I am going to try using this Argus map for Power BI. So that's going to load up, and this is going to give me a different visual of our countries. So now here, all of the borders for the countries, and when I hover over one of those, it's going to show me the population for that country. So it gives me a different way that I can navigate. But still, as I click on China over here, it's still tied together with the visuals that I already had. Now there are, we have like 20-ish visuals that are showing up here. I also have the ability to click on here and get more visuals. So when I say get more visuals, there's a whole library of visuals that are available for me to select from to leverage with Power BI. So AppSource is going to pull up ones that are out of box free for me to add. And you can create your own visuals inside of your organization that you would like to add as well. So you guys have control over that library. All right, so within a very short period of time, we were able to go get data, we were able to clean our data, and we were able to create these 4 visualizations. This one on the bottom is leveraging language understanding and artificial intelligence models to help us interact with our data. And I have not written any code yet. So I've done all of this just by clicking and leveraging an interface that's Excel for my data cleansing. And here I go. So now I'd like to take this report and publish it out so others inside of my organization can see it. So come up under File, and I can publish. And when I click Publish, I'm going to publish to Power BI. I'll save first. So let's call this live demo. Okay, so I have a pop-up now that's asking me where I would like to publish my Power BI report. So earlier I showed you in the Power BI service that we have the workspaces that you're allowed to publish to. Each workspace is its own security group. So I am going to choose my workspace, but as you see, I have some ability inside of Microsoft to pick some other workspace, and I has control over where they will let me publish out my Power BI reports. I'm going to publish to my workspace. And we do have the ability in Power BI to create dashboards and reports that are intended to be viewed on mobile apps. And Power BI will help us with that and will tailor the experience for a mobile phone. You have the ability when you create a report to have dual version. So if someone is coming in on a web page, they'll see the web page version versus having a different link for the mobile version without having to go through and manually create two separate reports. So got it, it says it has published for me. So now I'm going to pop back over here into my workspaces, into my reports, and let's see, let's refresh that. I now, oops, sorry, I clicked into one by accident. So I now have this live demo report that I just created with you. So when I click live demo, you will see that everything that I just did has published out here. The Argus map is taking a second to load up, but it's pretty quick considering we have a lot of things going on behind the scenes in the user interface, and there we go. And I could now do things like invite other people to come in and to see my report. I can, when I'm inviting someone to see the report too, I can let them just see it themselves. I can allow them to reshare it with other people, assuming that the other people they share it with have access into my workspace. I can allow people to extend my report by starting with the data that I pulled and appending some of their own data, but I can also prevent that. So I have a lot of control over here. I also could take this report and create a dashboard out of it. So the difference between a report and a dashboard is a report are all these tiles. A dashboard is a container that can hold different tiles as well as different reports. And you have the ability at the dashboard level to get alerts and receive notifications. So that's kind of the difference between the two. I at first was a little confused because this to me seemed like conceptually a dashboard, what we're looking at right now, but this is considered a report. And a report consists of the definition of the visuals that go along with the report, as well as behind the scenes, the data set that is used by the report. So when you publish things to the Power BI service and you publish a report out, you actually are publishing both a report and a data set that you can choose to use again. So that is a very quick cruise through creating a Power BI report from getting the data all the way through the publishing. Are there any questions before I move into, I'm going to hop back over and give you a little bit more of an in-depth view about what else you could do. We did a quick report here just so I could show how quickly you could get from start to finish, but there are a lot of options along the way. I'm going to go through just a couple of those with you before I go to official Q&A. But if you have any questions about what I've done so far, let me know. Or let Vanessa let me know.
We have one question. Can you allow and restrict access to certain people from your workspace?
If your administrator has allowed you to invite someone else into your workspace, you would have the ability to do that. As far as restricting people out of your workspace, they wouldn't be in unless you invited them in. So yes, you have security controls around how you can do that. Your administrators are the ones who are going to decide for each individual in your organization what they are allowed to do with different workspaces.
Thank you. We have one more. Can you comment on non-static data sets like SQL data?
Yeah. So that's one of the things I'll hop into here quick. So when we talk about getting data, I talked about the connectors, and you have the ability to shape, transform, clean. You also have the ability, when you get the data, specify for the connection that you made, whether you want the connection to be a download of the data into the Power BI data set, or if you want it to be a connection to the data source. So you do have the ability to control that. And that's something that's really good to think about as you're architecting your reports. If you're allowing the report live connection into the data source, the benefit is you're going to see current data all of the time. Whenever the report opens, the most current data is going to be retrieved. The drawback to that approach could be the load on your data source. So if your SQL Server database is a transactional database, you might want to really pause before allowing a reporting solution to grab onto the transactional data source that's required for transaction processing. You don't want to slow down the performance of applications that rely on that data source. However, if that SQL data source is a reporting database, you probably don't have those same concerns. But the other concern that you might have if you do the live connection is you want to evaluate the performance of the load of the Power BI report, because what I was just showing here, you saw there was a second where Power BI was going out, querying the data and pulling it back, and then the transforms that we apply get applied to the data as it gets pulled back. So you just have to be careful with your architecture, where if you're grabbing a large data set, you might not want to do a live connection, because the live connection might require a slower report load for your users. So you just have to balance. Do they really need to see up to the second data and they're willing to wait? Cool. If they want to get a quick, responsive report load, you can also schedule your data set to refresh behind the scenes on a regular basis. So you could preload the data at a scheduled time interval so that you have nearly up-to-date information without having that performance hit up front when the report loads. So
thanks, Valerie. I think that was all the questions for now.
Okay. You also have the ability to create custom data sources within your organization. So if you have a data source that you want to allow your business users to connect to, and they might not know how to connect directly to an API, and you want to do some of that work up front for them, maybe you want to take care of the security up front for them and limit the amount of data that your business users would be able to access. As an organization, you have the ability to create your own custom connectors that you then publish in the connector library for your organization. So if Microsoft doesn't have a connector out of box that you're looking for, we have generic connectors like API connectors, OData connectors, and ODBC connectors that you as an IT group can take that connector and you can add wrappers around it and then publish it out to the connector library that you show to your business users. And if I also showed you how we could do point and click for all of the transforms that we did, you also have the ability to use Power Query. So you don't have to go with no code. If you have analysts who are very comfortable using Power Query, they can leverage their skill set in order to do transforms through a dialogue area where they don't have to mess around with the whiz if that's not how they want to work with the data. Those are kind of some tips on getting data. The other thing is, we didn't touch on this a lot, I mentioned it, but Power BI has the ability to get data from both public cloud as well as from on-premises data sources. So if you have parts of your data estate is still sitting in your private cloud, You can create Power BI reports that would join that private cloud data with maybe some Office 365 data. So you have the ability to do both of those. And so we have gateway services that would get installed on your local servers if you wanted to expose it to Power BI. And then from the analysis side, I didn't walk you through any heavy analysis, but you have the ability to create models. I talked about it very quickly. You can visually, there's this visual tool that you can use, and you see the lines here that are showing the relationships between different columns. So Power BI gives you a place where you can do that as well. And in addition, inside of the modeling tools, we leverage DAX, is the behind the scenes language. So where you can do a lot of things point and click, and you can do a lot of drag and drop, and you can use wizards. You also have the ability inside of Power BI modeling tools to leverage DAX and the formulas that are available in DAX. And the dashboard that we saw was pretty simple. The dashboard in a day link that I gave you would take you to more of an executive level dashboard that relies on sales data. So it's going to show you more what if analysis, what if our sales went up 20%, and it has a whole bunch of different active. So play around more if you're interested, because that dashboard in a day curriculum will take you just the details of how you leverage all of the time hierarchies so that you can get to by quarter and by month and by day, how you can do things like put slicers on your dashboards, how you can leverage the language understanding in a way that we hadn't. So there's a ton that you can do with the visualization. We did a simple thing, but I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to build a more robust dashboard, you still can do it quickly. The curriculum contents that I gave you would have you build, I'll show it to you really quick. Would have you build. No thanks, not right now. So this is the dashboard in a day final report. It'd have you build a report that looks like this. And you see there's a whole bunch of numbers and slicers. I can move through time. I can look at how the revenue has shifted over a year. I can filter things at the top of this report. And this dashboard is what you would build if you're doing the dashboard in a day. All right. You also can, I did not mention bookmarks and custom navigation, but that's another thing that's a way that you can have people interact with your dashboards. That's much more robust than if you were giving them a flat page. You have the ability inside of your reports to bookmark specific things, and you can also walk people through numerous reports that tie together so that you can tell a story with your data. And then when we published, I talked about publishing to the workspace. You could publish to on-premises if you were using the Power BI report server. And for the data refresh, I talked about different ways that we could do the data refresh. You can do a live connection like we talked about before, or you could also do an automatic data refresh. So you could program your report to go out and grab new data whenever the report loads, or you can schedule behind the scenes a refresh of the data. So it is pre-compiled, pre-grabbed, pre-loaded, so that when you open up the dashboard, you get a really performant dashboard load. And then packaging your reports into apps for easy consumption and control. That was the Power BI embedded. So when you create a report, you can publish it in a way that it can then be wrapped inside of an application, including Teams. I know that you guys were talking about Teams earlier. You have the ability to point to a Power BI Teams. You don't even have to do any custom wrapping there. That's just a pointer that Teams has great integration with Power BI, as does SharePoint and other Office 365 tools. And all of this though, so again, back in the day when people were using just Excel to do the reporting, which I still have many customers who are still doing that, who are still using Excel for a lot of their reporting. The problem with Excel is as you're passing around a file, there's no insight and ability for people to know what state is the data in. What was the life cycle of that report, that Excel report? Who's using it? How often is it being accessed? So when we are talking about pushing things into Power BI has this administrative and governance wrapper around all of the services that are published so that your administrators can get insights into which data is being connected, how often are reports being used. That's one thing that has been a trick that maybe hasn't tracked as well. So because if a report's not being used, why don't we unload the technical debt and retire it? So there's all of the analytics and insights that you would expect with the web service you are able to get with Power BI. So the governance piece, I think, is cannot be overstated how cool that is, because data, as you get more and more data coming into your organization, there's also more and more risk of telling the wrong story by accident. So Power BI helps manage that data estate in a way where you trust that the information that you're sending out to your end users is legitimate, and you have a governance team who can oversee it and ensure that you're leveraging the tools properly. Those are kind of, and collaboration. I didn't talk about how you can, as you push out reports and desktop or dashboards, you also have the ability to collaborate and talk with one another around those published assets, similarly as you might if you were publishing a document into SharePoint. So in addition to the report and the interactivity with the report, there is also the ability to chat and to discuss around what's going on in this report. Why is our number so high right now? Or why is our number so low if it's a revenue number? So that, in a nutshell, is Power BI. And I think that I am just about at time, or maybe I'm at time. So I'll stop if there's any more questions. There's a lot more in this deck. There's a lot more detail about the connectors, and there's more detail about your connection options, live versus pulling down a copy. So feel free to cruise through this PowerPoint afterwards if you want to go a little deeper than we were able to go today.
Awesome, thanks, Val. Do we have any final questions, Messa, for?
Yes, just one last question. Can a dashboard refresh its data based on a timer?
So I know that you can schedule a data set refresh, but the dashboard, I think that you just do that in the back end data set. So I would have to look into that. I have not tried doing that. I haven't.
If you're talking the report, yeah, right. You can schedule those all day long. But dashboards are just reflective of reports, so I guess double check, but I would assume it would be off the report.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm not sure. So that if you did it off the dashboard, the benefit is you could have the dashboard basically kick off all of the reports, is what I think that would buy you. I'm unsure. I know that you can get to a result where you have the dashboard being refreshed on a scheduled basis because you have the ability to schedule refresh of the data sets and the reports for sure. I can look into that though and get to you.
Thank you. I think that's it for questions.
There we go.
Okay.
Well, then I'm gonna Vanessa, if you want to live up video so we can get your video on stage as well.
Okay, so I will stop sharing.
So I think, yeah, you can stop sharing, and we're queuing Vanessa up instead of Valerie. Valerie, thank you. You're welcome to hang around for Q&A audio-wise if you want. Otherwise, I think you can drop, and we're kind of at a wrap up, right?
Yeah. So we'll just take, this is last opportunity for any questions. We did have one that we didn't address, and Doug, I think this is a question for you. Okay. So has Microsoft heard any complaints around performance when people are using those background effects? So this person has seen it impacting their company's conferences. I
have not, but it's like any other visual effect. It's going to depend on the horsepower, the compute, it's not going to impact the performance of the conference because the conference has no clue. It's happening at the PC level where it assembles that visual and then the visual gets sent. Normally, it actually improves performance of the video stream because there's less changing of data behind you. The worst thing you can do is have like a ceiling fan, something spinning in the background because it has to send all that motion detail forward. So normally, and this isn't always true, if you have an animated visual effect, those are bad. But a normal visual effect would not impact a conference over much because you're actually, the computer's figuring out the horizon around your head and then sending less changes per frame. So normally it actually wouldn't. It could impact the computer if it doesn't have a lot of horsepower, or if the person is heavily multitasking. That's definitely possible, but it shouldn't overly impact it. So I have not heard that. I can tell you if you're interested in where the problem lies, and you can go check out the archive on our YouTube channel. If you go to Office Flash Friday, we did the call quality dashboard about 3 weeks ago, and you can go look in Teams. You can actually see the call quality for every meeting and see exactly what's causing bad call quality. So I was about to say, I don't think so, but you don't have to guess. I hate guessing anyway. Go look at the call quality dashboard. I'm sure the success people can help you out. Diving into that data as well. So then you can find out like which conferences were bad, what devices were people using, were they shouting into their speaker on their laptop, were they using a headset? Like a lot of things contribute, but you would then know if it is believed to be network related or something else. So don't guess, go get some data.
Cool. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, as you can see on the slide here, I'll make an announcement and post the feedback link here as well. We'd love your feedback on the event. Thanks for your patience while we experience some technical difficulties.
Yes, thank you.
Just wanted to make a note that a post-event email will be going out. It'll have the recording of this event. It'll have information on your gift card. So if you missed the beginning of the event, we announced that we're giving all participants a $25 gift card to a local Minneapolis restaurant. And then lastly, that email will also have the resources that were mentioned in this presentation.
Awesome. Well, otherwise, we're like 5 minutes up. If there are no final Q&A, I think we can probably call it an end. Not bad considering everyone was working from home and we came together on top of it. It's no River Center event like you guys normally do, but at least we got something done. Hopefully you found some new stuff you can do in there and got some questions answered. If there are follow-on things, obviously success. Do we have any final Q&A?
I don't see any more questions coming through, but as always, Success is here to help. So let us know either through that feedback form or just through an email.
Awesome. Well, then we're going to call a halt to this event 4 minutes early. So we very much appreciate you guys tuning in and spending some time with us today. Thanks to you guys for Success, for Lenovo, for the Microsoft people who helped out, and we'll call a halt to it here. So thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.